Hey, Patrick, how you doing, bud?
Not at all, buddy. So we have an interesting video today, don't we?
We have Miss Jillian Michaels, and she's going to be discussing how the world, as far as NATO and the United States interact, logistics chains, and those kinds of things, and what we need to do to strengthen the bonds as opposed to tear them apart.
Yes, common sense, as they would say long ago.
Yeah, well, not even long ago. They say it today. Today would be a good day to say a common sense thing as well. So we're going to let her cook for a little bit, but she's going to be bringing up some really good points, things that we agree with, some that we're kind of on the fence about, but I think she makes a pretty good formation of her argument. I think it's pretty good stuff.
Oh, she's very, very good, actually. Very good.
She's well spoken.
The left is going to tell you that Trump is uniquely responsible for this crisis, that if he could just be diplomatic and play ball, the world order would restore itself. And that is a fantasy.
Like Trump, dislike Trump, he is attempting to do what his base elected him to do, and that's going to create confrontation based on the amount of power that has been accumulated on both sides and them entrenching themselves so badly. But the world has gotten to a point where something has to go one way or the other, and we are in very, very big danger from multiple cascading type events. The United States has gone to secure a lot of shipping routes, Panama, Gulf of Oman through the Strait of Hormuz and the Persian Gulf, as well as through Malaysia, to attempt to secure a situation where we can control some of the resource movement, and we also protect a lot of the shipping. Europe also helps, obviously, but we tend to do a lot of that. And if there's more than one issue, even as a force that can go out there and interact with things, right, expeditionary type forces, the United States still couldn't handle more than one front.
Yes, that's why it's important for the United States to try to build bridges, maybe with its allies, over the next weeks and months.
That would
be a good idea.
Well, that would be positive. But some people are viewing how Trump is acting as kind of a bull in a china shop. And some of the things he's doing might seem that way, but it seems like he's trying to drill down on the things that he was elected to do.
And do you think he'll have the ability to solve the crisis in Iran?
Well, Marco Rubio is a really smart dude. Steve Miller's a really smart dude. I think if they get their heads together, they can absolutely get it together. But I think there's some existential threats and some things going on that we're not taking into account, or things that we can't or don't know about. We don't have the full big picture, and it might seem like he's being a little reckless. Some of his comments were certainly a little reckless, but it might just be to spurn the discussion. Sometimes we don't talk about a thing until the orange man says something wild, and we're like, oh, well, maybe we should look at the thing.
I think from a European point of view, price in the pump, you could say, going up through the roof ever since this war started. A lot of us are asking the question, when is it going to end? What does the end even look like for the United States?
I think that there have been a lack of consequences across the globe with interaction, and a lot of people leaning on the United States. Not so much NATO, but NATO as well, but lots of places that lean on us, and we're tired of the lean. I think that's the perception of it. We don't want to be the world's bank as far as paying for all of the things in the world, rebuilding country after country after country, only to be disavowed by that country once they've achieved a certain level of success.
Yes, but what people are asking in Europe is, does the US have an overall plan to finish this war, or are they just winging it?
I'm pretty sure they've got a offensive, defensive, and sustainment type order set up to attempt to meet that exact goal. You know as well as I do, once you get on the ground, like Mike Tyson said, everything changes once you get hit in the face.
What a lot of people are asking in Europe, was there a need for this attack on Iran?
I think I'm going to have to defer that, and I think I'm going to have to get more information on it before I make any kind of judgment on that specifically. It appears from our leaders' point of view, it's a thing that needed to happen. We elected them to do the thing that they're doing, so we're kind of at their mercy on this one. And the next election we have,
well, in fairness now to the MAGA movement, they elected a president who promised to be a president of peace. Remember that promise he was making, where he finished all wars across the globe and so on. But the opposite seems to be happening in the last couple of months, like from Venezuela onwards.
Well, Venezuela is an operation that took less than 8 hours. The thing in Iran is they're enriching uranium to the point where if they have ballistic missiles, they can shoot them into Europe. And when they said that they want to kill Israel and they want to kill the Western world, I tend to believe them.
Do you think the US was dragged into this war willingly or unwillingly by their allies in Israel?
I think the United States made the executive decision to support whoever decided to go in there.
But your own vice,
Israel.
Yes, but your own vice president even turned around and accidentally said in an interview that they were dragged in by Israel because Israel was going in with or without us. This is exact words he said.
A lot of that has to do with Iran being an existential threat with their proxy armies. So they represent the head of the Hydra that they needed to cut off to stop the existential threat.
Well, I understand that in multiple terrorist organizations funded by Iran. From a European point of view, I'm just looking for, is there a way of the US coming out of this with a very good peace deal?
I don't know about a peace deal. It might be we have to beat you into submission deal, which will take quite a bit longer, of course.
And do you think the rest of the world is going to sit idly by while the oil prices keep climbing up as they are? What do you think eventually will happen there?
People will stop paying for car insurance, but they'll keep paying for their fuel.
No, what do you think the world's reaction is going to be to this war if they keep getting the pressure?
So you have a country that has a ton of proxy terrorists, organizations that they support, that pay for the death of Jewish people. That is about as bad an entity as you can get. And I don't know what the right answer is, but I know that is absolutely unacceptable.
I understand it's unacceptable, but I'm talking from the rest of the world's point of view is they're not going to sit idly by while oil prices continue to rise, while they run out of fertilizer for their fields and so on.
The fertilizer thing is as bad or worse than the fuel because you can get the fuel from elsewhere. Once you set up those logistics chains, I think the fertilizer is the big one. Anyway.
That's what's causing a big problem now in Asia at the moment.
American retrenchment, the pull towards stepping back, questioning the cost of global commitments, asking why America should keep paying for other people's security. It's not a Trump phenomenon. It's not even a Republican phenomenon. It's a decades-long bipartisan trend that's rooted in genuine structural exhaustion. The American public is tired of allies that ride free, tired of paying for a global order while bridges crumble and health issues bankrupt families.
What you were saying, there's a direct impact on the American citizen, and they're pretty tired of it. So she's going to...
And by the way, I fully agree with it, that Europe long ago should have stepped up, and we should have spent more on building up our defenses, all across Eastern Europe especially, but not just Eastern Europe, but get our manufacturing back up when it comes to arms industry, instead of being so heavily reliant on one country.
Well, France and Germany are deindustrializing in a big fashion, and that's not a healthy thing.
Well, they're reindustrializing now at the moment, according to Bloomberg and Euronews and every other reliable economic forum out there.
But the downtrend was pretty scary. You got to admit that's pretty scary.
It was up to a year and a half, or roughly 12 months onwards, the last 12 months especially. They're really ramping up.
Rheinmetall got a massive contract too, so those industries should be building.
Yeah, but that's because of the extra defense spending and so on all across the European countries, especially Germany, France, and others.
Good, then they can help defend themselves way better than before. That's a good thing.
But what I'm talking about, what Shu will talk about later on, is the long-term effect on U.S. defense. If Europe doesn't need them anymore, which looks like is eventually will happen, without those bases in Europe, how will the US project power across the globe without those refueling bases and so on?
Then what's the answer? How are they going to do that? That's a good question.
Yeah, when they come to an understand, will they eventually sit down and start playing nice together again, or will it be a different understanding put in place?
One would hope, and Article 5 of the NATO treaty still stands.
But here's where the America First position struggles in this instance, if your take on it boils down to America only. The answer to Allied free riding is going to be leverage and renegotiation, not abandonment, because it certainly doesn't seem abandonment punishes the freeloaders.
If there's a power vacuum, someone will fill it, for sure. And it's not going to be the good ones. It's not going to be the nice ones. It's going to be the ones that can get in there and take the most negative impact advantage they can for their own self-serving interests.
But it's not just that. It's not just a vacuum of military invasion. It's also the economic vacuum that's going to be filled by somebody else as well, which you can see with the EU's trade agreements, say with the likes of South America. You can see it with China and so on. As the US, as she's saying, pulls back more, somebody else is going to fill that market, and not just the market, but try to invade. But at the moment, Russia is still struggling to take Ukraine, so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and we were going to do a light episode today.
It rewards the adversaries. It's like the person you played hard to get with that found a new man and he got oil and he got computer chips. Sorry, but it's true. And here's the historical reality that no amount of political spin changes. When dominant powers step back, the vacuum they leave is not filled by international law and multilateral cooperation. The nearest ambitious power that's willing to bear the costs of expansion is going to step up every time in every era.
Yeah, it's a logical conclusion to, if the space is open, I will exploit the space. Whatever
Yes.
the resources that they have, whatever the thing is they do, I will take the thing and manage it to my own advantage and to the detriment of the people over which I am now the overlord functionally in this
Yes, that
space.
happens all. She's right. It happens all through history. If somebody leaves a marketplace, the market fills it with somebody else. That's happened. Same with defense. She's right.
When Britain weakened after World War II, the Soviet Union moved into Eastern Europe. Stat, when America pulled out of Iraq, Iran expanded its influence across the region. When the Obama administration drew red lines in Syria and failed to enforce them, Russia stepped directly into the conflict. When Libya collapsed, Turkish and Russian militias and traffickers rushed into the vacuum. So let's be honest about where this goes. In the best case scenario, the stress on the current system forces reform instead of collapse. Europe finally rearms seriously, trade relationships are restructured to
Like you were saying, we have to restructure the trade. NATO has to have the
No,
ability
but
for those home countries to defend themselves more effectively.
the problem is already at the moment, you can see it all across the globe of different trade pacts have been formed around the world. Like Europe is forming them with South America. I know that's been in the pipeline for the last nearly 20 years. But now they're also forming pacts with India, China, and other countries.
Right,
So,
which is going to trigger a Monroe Doctrine issue as well.
Yeah, as she's saying, trade deals are being reworked around the United States instead of with the United States, if that makes sense.
They take us out of the program because they believe that we're the bull in the China shop and we're causing lots of issues.
No, because marketplaces, like most businesses, like a nice stable bottom line. They don't like to kind of, where is this going to go every 4 years? They're like nice stable markets. All markets want stability. They don't want to kind of be guessing every 4 years what is coming down the line here. You understand what you're going to get out of France, for instance. Yeah, the president might change, or prime minister might change, but you roughly know what you're going to get out of France, for instance. You know roughly what you're going to get out of Germany.
We have a polarized system in the United States, which now, with those camps becoming more entrenched and the other one just being wrong because they're on the other team, it lends to some destabilization for sure in the global markets.
Reduce dangerous dependencies. America and its allies build a coherent strategy around semiconductors, energy, manufacturing, and critical technology. Western institutions stabilize enough to sustain long-term commitments and credible deterrence.
So one of the big pieces of that is the energy piece. And with the modular nuclear power that we have now and can create, it's a thing that we should probably seek to do, so that we're not stuck behind the absolutely insane raise in prices for energy, especially where I'm at. It's incredible. A couple of years back, my bill doubled. And I called the energy company and said, what happened? They're like, well, we raised your rate 90% because we could. I was like, whoa, but you can do that? They're like, oh yeah. So you owe us X amount of dollars, double from what you paid last year. So that led us to have to reduce our energy consumption, not so much air conditioning, cooking a little less, right? Not so much heat in the summer, like natural gas.
They say cut the cloth to the measure, as they would say.
Yeah, it was insane. And not that I was being egregious before with the use of energy, or not to my perception, but I have had to cut down severely.
And if we're paying attention, parts of that process are already happening. Trump's pressure on NATO forced defense spending higher across Europe. The tariff wars and reshoring push were aimed at reducing dependence on China and rebuilding domestic manufacturing capacity.
Again, Europe and France are going to reindustrialize because they're going to have to. More of the money that's spent by the EU is going to go into those kinds of programs for us to get back manufacturing, which is also going to entice them to create better, safer, cleaner energy that's more efficient, because they can no longer really get that from Russia, which has caused massive issues in Germany with, it's a little cold there sometimes. Don't know if you know about the countries in Europe, but they got snow and things, and it gets real cold in the winter. People will die.
Well, yeah, I do live in Europe, so and I have traveled to Europe quite a bit during the winter times, Christmas markets and so on. But going back to the reindustrialization of Germany and France and other European countries,
Poland too.
It
Yeah.
is a good thing. It is
Yes.
absolutely fantastic. But the condition of this new defense spending is at least 85% of it is conditional to be spent within the European Union zone.
Right. And the United
So they're going
States
to
has
have
been
to.
restricted on the amount of financial support that they can put into the situation to remove their ability to control those things once
No,
they're set.
the reason is because Europe now realizes it was so heavily dependent on one ally. Now they've basically woken up a small bit and realized we have to start manufacturing all these things ourselves.
But with
Because-
diversification within the EU, for sure.
The fights over Greenland and Panama and energy and rare earth minerals and supply chains all point toward a broader effort to secure strategic geography and critical infrastructure in a more unstable world. The outcome is still possible. The ingredients exist, but there's also a darker path. One where American political dysfunction and allied freeloading, Chinese aggression toward Taiwan, Russian opportunism in Europe create a cascade of crises that the current system cannot absorb.
Cannot absorb all of that excess and all that conflict one sitting. It's just not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. Like, as I say, Europe at the moment is more concentrated on dealing with Ukrainian interests, which causes it literally in our back door. Where America seems to be trying to solve lots of little problems everywhere all at once, which is it's a good plan on paper, but realistically, can they do it? They
Well,
have the military force. They have the military force, yes, to do it.
Right. What it has to do with controlling certain logistics and certain movements of assets, resources, and energy around the world, and with controlling some of the spaces in Malaysia that we've just gotten into a pact with them, and with the Strait of Hormuz, and with the Panama Canal. Like, we're securing a lot of those things, and the big piece was Maduro in Venezuela, right? So now the new
And
leader there is
Venezuela,
playing ball.
and Venezuela seems to be playing ball. Are they at the moment?
Yeah. The nice lady they have in charge now seems to be singing with the band.
Not necessarily World War III, although serious people no longer treat that as unthinkable, but a world where the rules-based order, the institutions managing trade, finance, and security either collapse under pressure or just become too weak to matter. And for Americans, it doesn't stay abstract. It hits the gas pump almost immediately. When Russia invaded Ukraine, energy prices surged within days. When Iran threatens the Strait of Hormuz, markets react before Americans even know where the Strait of Hormuz is. That's globalization. Whether people like it or not, Americans are already deeply tied to the stability of global trade routes and energy corridors, and those problems don't improve in a world where hostile powers gain more control over them.
So when the bad guys control things, then it is much harder to get those things, and the logistics trains become just arduous, to put it mildly, to get those resources to those global markets.
Yes, but as I was going back earlier, is how much more pain do you think the Western world will take with this war before they'll step in themselves and bring both sides to the table?
And force them to do what?
Hammer out some sort of deal? Do you see that ever happening?
It's going to have to happen. It's going to have to. There's not going to be, if the EU is that mad about it and they decide to put their foot down and...
But I'm talking about, but even most Americans, how much more would you be willing to pay in the pump because of this war before you would get onto your leaders?
Kind of an amorphous question. Probably more than they're paying now, but I don't know how much more. I don't think that's a knowable thing.
Yeah. But do you think eventually they will come to some sort of uneasy peace? Is that the best word to describe it?
The positions on both sides are untenable from the other one's perspective.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. So you have an immovable object trying to get thrown with an unstoppable force.
And it hits the grocery store too. Food costs rise, shipping costs rise, insurance costs rise. The price of everything that moves through vulnerable trade routes rises.
So because of the fertilizer not getting through, the cost of getting the food is going to be more as well. The logistics of it, like we talked about it either last episode or the one before, my grocery bill has doubled. We did the math the other day. household budget, and we're paying more for the turnips and for the pasta and for the milk and such than we were. And it's not good.
Yeah.
It's going the wrong direction in a big way. It's far accelerating our ability to earn. And on top of that, again, I'm paying more than 50 cents per dollar in taxes. It's going poorly.
And do you think people see the connection between prices going up and current policies?
Well, it's starting to become evident to everybody that there's a reason things are happening. And it seems like global conflict and issues involving those logistics chains seem to be the thing that's causing these. We're hoping those things can get resolved quickly and peaceably. It's looking, again, like we have two untenable sets of dictates from 2 or 3 separate governments.
Not temporarily. Somebody has to secure the oceans, the checkpoints, and the infrastructure that modern economies depend on. But the deepest hit might come from something that most of us never think about at all, and that's de-dollarization. For 70 years, the dollar's dominance in global finance has given Americans extraordinary advantage.
The petrodollar, which we could just print. If that happens, then we lose lots of clout in the world stage for sure.
And the most important one, as has been pointed out by many economic experts, is the ability of the United States to leverage debt to finance themselves.
Once that goes, we're going to have a serious issue for sure.
Buy oil and settle trade and hold reserves and conduct business in American dollars. It's why we can borrow more cheaply. We can run larger deficits. We can absorb shocks other economies can't survive. It has a name. Economists call it America's exorbitant privilege, and it is worth trillions to the U.S. economy. And China's already building alternatives. BRICS nations are building parallel payment systems. Saudi Arabia and other countries are increasingly willing to conduct energy transactions
in the yuan and in other types of currency. They're accepting those trades as the de-dollarization. This is all part of.
Yeah, more OPEC members are willing to negotiate outside the dollar.
Right, and Japan's going to have to dump a ton of their bonds pretty soon here because their inflation rate is going through the
roof. They're holding currently 23% of your national debt is owned by them at the moment.
Yeah, and that's a very vulnerable place for us to be. Yeah,
and unfortunately, Japan at the moment is going through its own massive crisis because of this particular war.
With the birth rate crisis on top of that, and their monetary value going down.
So they are talking about seriously dumping the national debt that they have on file.
Outside the dollar system, none of those alternatives are close to replacing the dollar yet, but the direction matters because if the dollar gradually loses dominance, we're going to feel it everywhere. Higher borrowing costs, higher mortgage rates, weaker purchasing power, slower economic growth, a lower standard of living. And then there's the scenario that nobody wants to say out loud. The possibility that erosion stops being gradual. A Chinese move on Taiwan, a Russian escalation in the Baltics, a direct confrontation involving major powers that turns supply chain shortages and inflation into the least of our problems. Which is why I think that the America First instinct is correct. We should absolutely be doing what's best for America.
But on the same foot, we should ensure that the logistics trains that supply American people and European people are upheld as well and safely.
Yeah, not just Europe or the United States. Globally, the supply chains should be secured. I do agree with the United States when it comes to that. That does come also at a very, very high cost on both sides, which, as they say, as she said, there's no easy way to fix that problem. Like a lot of our major trade routes, I wouldn't say are held hostage, but you have to pay a toll to get your goods through.
Plus, you have to insure the ships as well. There's exactly a lot of hidden costs that people are unaware of.
Question is what that actually means. Does it mean retreating from the world and hoping that hostile powers don't fill the vacuum? Or fill the vacuum peacefully? Or does it mean maintaining enough global influence to keep trade flowing, energy stable, shelves stocked, and the dollar strong? Because the moment America stops shaping the system, somebody else is going to start shaping it for us. And whether that power sits in Beijing or in Moscow, I can promise you one thing. They are not going to put America first.
Bit of a stark warning.
Oh, yeah. Well, she, like her channel says, is keeping it real. So the big takeaway is that an America First doctrine is good, but the point is the logistics trains globally need to be maintained. The ability to move goods, services, energy, and all those things around efficiently.
Also, very, very importantly, is having good trade deals along with good trade infrastructure.
Something that's advantaged both sides of the slate. All right. Anything else for the good of the people, Patrick?
No, that's it. It's a pretty stark warning, all right?
All right. For
Wow.
Patrick McCallum, I am Alex Johansson. Like, ring the bell, subscribe, and help us beat the algorithm. We're the A&P Gents, and we are